Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to be talking about right now is something that is causing so much chaos that a friend of mine who lives over in the UK, she emailed me and she's just like, you got to get this out. You got to tell them what's really going on. So, um, Britain is literally, I don't know if it's falling or if it's just burning, literally. Okay. So before I get started, make sure you have coffee. Seriously, because this is going to, I mean, it's going to turn your stomach. All right. So it's sliding into chaos big time. Okay. And it's in the wake of what happened on July 29th when those little girls, okay, when they were taken from us way too soon. And that happened in Southport, okay? And now there's a lot of protests going on, and it's happening in 35 towns and cities across the kingdom. As this new prime minister, his name is Keir, Keir Starmer, he's called the protesters thugs that were clearly driven by far right hatred. Now, this Starmer, he's barely been in office for a month, all right? So he hasn't even gotten his toes wet yet. And he announced that there is a police crackdown using facial recognition technology and internet censorship. Yeah, that's one way of doing it. Facial recognition would prevent these protesters, like what they're doing to the J6ers, from even getting on a train. And I'm going to call him a socialist, okay, PM, apparently is suspending the presumption of innocence in the UK. So you're guilty until proven innocent. Now, over 35 protests are planned across the country under the motto, enough is enough, with several counter protests that are being organized by far left NGO under the hashtag or whatever you want to call it, hope not hate. Now, 7 people were arrested in Southport after the riots on Tuesday, while 111 were arrested in London on Wednesday, and 7 were arrested in Hartlepool on Thursday. Now, a protest in Sunderland, outside of Newcastle, in Northumbria, turned violent on Friday night. 10 people were arrested and 3 police officers were injured. Now, at least 2 police stations were attacked. Masked protesters confronted riot police in Sunderland. Protests in Manchester on Saturday have begun turning violent as protesters clashed with Antifa and migrant gangs. Now, Britons are complaining of a 2-tier policing as Antifa and pro-Palestine protests are treated with much less rigor by police, earning Starmer the nickname 2-tier Keir. Yeah. Now, the protests that are in Manchester, there's chanting going on. And the chanting is, who the F is Allah? Yeah. So now crowds have gathered in Hull and in Stoke on Trent at the moment. And protests also have now spread to Northern Ireland. And I also have a friend who lives in Northern Ireland. So I'm waiting to hear from her to hear what's going on over there. And the protesters in Northern Ireland, they're chanting Islam out in front of Belfast City Hall. Now, remarkably, the Patriots flew Irish flags and the Union Jack, in spite of centuries-old hatred between the Irish and the English in Ulster. Yeah. Now, the counter-protesters flew Marxist Antifa and PLO flags, and now I'm going to read to you the email from one of my best friends in the UK, okay? Because she's literally in the middle of all of this mess. Okay, so this is how her email starts out. The whole of the UK is a powder keg this weekend with lots of riots and protests going on in major towns and cities. However, it would appear that several recent incidents in the UK have culminated in this, which I'm not going to go into, as to be honest, I really don't know much about what's been happening as I limit my intake of news. It seems a stabbing incident at Southport was a final straw, followed by a special news conference by the Prime Minister, which has outraged and angered the British public. I'll tell you about this later in the email, as I will always give you links of which I'm reporting to you. And those links will be in the description box below, okay? So we know what happened in Southport on Monday. People in Southport were actually holding a vigil on Monday evening when someone apparently turned up with a knife, obviously to start trouble. However, I do not know if this person turned up on their own or there were more of them, but this is why the vigil turned out to be a riot. Now, while this was going on, a riot also broke out in Hartlepool, which a police car was set on fire. Also in Southend, which is a seaside town, of a group of people decided to turn up dressed in black, faces covered, wielding machetes to start trouble there. These three events all took place on Monday evening. Then on Tuesday or Wednesday evening, a large protest occurred in Downing Street, which is the official residence of the Prime Minister. There were signs and chanting of Save Our Kids and Stop the Boats. There were several YouTubers in attendance live streaming the event, so I was able to flit between some of them and watch their streams, as some were placed in different areas. A couple of flares were set off in the direction of the Prime Minister's residence, along with some bottles and beer cans being thrown at the police, and supposedly someone made an AZI salute at the statue of Winston Churchill. But I must stress that for most of part of this protest was fairly peaceful and uneventful on the part of the protesters. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the police. They started using a technique called kettling, so they could divide people into smaller groups before going to make the arrest. Footage has emerged showing a riot police officer punching a man in the face and about the head, and kept kneeling on him as they were pulling him down to the ground. GB News presenter Matthew Daubney was at the event filming when all of a sudden he felt a handcuff go around his right free hand. Luckily, another police officer recognized him and told his colleague that the man was a news presenter, so of course he was let go without further incident. A 73-year-old woman who was an innocent bystander was also handcuffed, and she repeatedly told the officer that she had a pacemaker, but of course no notice was taken of her. Then towards the end of the protest, there were people standing about whom the police refused to let go, so I'm assuming they just ended up in arrest. This event was all over the news the next day, with MSM reporting over 100 arrests and making this out to be some sort of major riot and disorder, which it was not. The police went after easy and innocent targets, contrary to what MSM News states. The Prime Minister is now being called Stalin, as he is now being called, and has a special emergency meeting with police chiefs, and sometime later gave a televised news conference speech. I won't go into all the detail, but he has outraged and angered the British public by calling protesters far-right thugs. He said crime is crime, and that following his meeting with the police chiefs, they will establish a national capability to tackle violent disorders such as shared intelligence and a wider deployment of facial recognition systems to restrict their movement before they can even board a train. Basically, if you don't agree with immigrants committing crimes, then you're far right or you're racist. If you don't like or don't agree with illegals flooding the country every day, and again, you're far right and you're racist. This is utter BS and not true at all. I've seen things all over the internet that Starmer, which is the Prime Minister, is protecting Muslims and has declared war on the British people, etc., by his choice of words, and people are upset over this. So, of course, protests started being organized for various UK towns and cities this weekend. Also, somewhere along the line, Nigel Farage has been blamed for inciting things due to a quick speech he gave that was posted on YouTube. And Nigel Farage has not done or said anything to incite any violence. And like everyone else, he wanted answers to what happened in Southport. On Thursday, the perpetrator of the Southport stabbing had 2 court appearances. And it was after his second court appearance, he was then publicly named as Axel Ruda Cubana. And apparently he is due to turn 18 in a few days. And it would appear he was named to stop any further protests and violence. Then all the news outlets started posting pictures of him as a young boy rather than a recent photo. Why? So he looks innocent. You know, the only recent photo available on the day was a sketch of him during his court appearance. However, I do not know if this has changed since. So on Friday evening, a protest kicked off in Sunderland. The protests were trying to make their way to a local mosque, but the police were already waiting for them, and they didn't make it that far from what I was watching. As the evening progressed, a car was set on fire, as well as a police office or some sort of station. Bottles were being thrown at the police, and there were loads of broken glass everywhere in the streets. And by 11 p.m., there was a small gang of people taunting the police and wheeling bins full of glass at the police. I don't know what happened after this as I turned off the live streams and went to bed. I don't blame you. I did see the comments through, though, that more protests were organized for many UK towns and cities, including Manchester, Liverpool, Blackpool, Portsmouth, Hull, Stoke, Nottingham, Leeds, Belfast, and Northern Ireland. Those are just the ones I know about. I think there may be more planned for tomorrow on Sunday. No one has any idea whether this weekend will be a one-off or if these protesters and riots will continue for several days or several weeks. This morning I watched a short clip from Liverpool in which a British white man and a Muslim girl were having words. This Muslim girl, along with the others, started singing at him, "There's many more of us than there are of you." And this Muslim girl then put her hands on the British man and repeatedly pushed him away from her. So technically she assaulted him, right? Yes, she did. A policeman came along and led the man away from the girl. Now I wonder what happened to the girl. Was she arrested and charged with assault? Probably not. This is yet another thing that angered the British people, and we have a clear case of a two-tier policing country. Muslims and any other ethnic people can do what they like and commit crimes, but they don't get arrested or beaten by the police like the British person does. This is just not on at all. I also watched part of a live stream from Leeds, and there was a group of people repeatedly chanting "NAZI scum" at the British protesters. And the UK fought against the Nazis in World War II, so how are the British citizens NAZIs all of a sudden? You're not. Get a load of this one that I'm going to tell you about next. Oh, good God. She said, I was watching a live stream by a YouTube channel called Joe Vlogs. They traveled to Stoke to film what was going on there, and down at one end were Muslim armed with bricks and knives. From what I could see, they had a row of police standing in front of them so they couldn't get to the British people. They walked much further up, and all of a sudden a Muslim man came around the corner and hit 2 British men in the head with a hammer, one very badly, and I think the other 2 Brits were stabbed with a knife. And the British people were outraged that the police just stood there and did nothing, and they let this happen. The Muslim men ran off, and the police didn't go after them, nor did they even call for an ambulance. And someone who was with the YouTuber said on camera that it was him who phoned for an ambulance. And then there were more Muslims. They came around the corner. Supposedly they were coming from the mosque nearby, and they were throwing bricks and were armed with knives, supposedly. And then the police had the cheek to tell the British people that this was all they're doing, but yet it was the Muslims attacking the Brits with bricks, hammers, knives. What the hell are the police talking about? They're talking out their ass, you know that. I also watched part of a live stream from Hull, and things very quickly got out of hand there, with a large industrial bin set alight inside being pushed at the riot police. Then some of the shops had their windows smashed and looted, started occurring when the police did nothing about it. I stopped watching all the live streams at this point so I could write this email to you. At these protests, the people with their faces covered or partly covered, and obviously some of them are just there to cause trouble. For anyone knows, they could be paid or unpaid agitators. Some of them may even be actors or indeed undercover police, so who really knows? Also, all these protests, you have different groups protesting different things. Some of them were protesting about what happened in Southport to save our children. Some were protesting at the boats and the illegal immigrants coming every day. Some were protesting at immigration altogether. Some were anti-Muslim, and it goes on. But the message is clear. The British people have had enough of everything that has been going on, and to be called thugs is the flame that lit the fire. Now, the police are certainly not lily white in any of this and are doing themselves no favor when it comes to attacking British citizens during arrests or letting other ethnic groups commit crimes in front of them, and they do nothing about it. In this respect, they ask for nothing, and they get, when the British people turn on them and attack them. However, two wrongs don't make a right. No, you're right. For the most part, I'm following the live streams, and more than one at the same town or city has these live streams are telling the truth about what's really happening. What I personally think or feel doesn't come to it. I'm merely reporting on what's going on according to what I have actually watched. The UK is in absolute chaos right now. God sakes, just be safe. Amanda, that's all I care about. I just care about your safety. I don't care about anything else. I just care about your safety. Okay? I love you. All right, guys. All of the links that she left are in the description box below, okay? And for anybody else who's in the UK and Lisa in Northern Ireland, email me, okay? All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fear less.